Hi, Archie. I've been thinking for a couple days about this video that we made. You can see I'm wearing something different. I talked about two big ideas in this video. First, I talked about how we have found what I call the author's message for this book. When an author writes a book, the author often has a message that he or she wants to give the reader, something that the author wants the reader to learn. And sometimes it is something the author wants the reader to learn about life. The other big idea that I talked about was how, as a reader, we need to be careful when we are reading, not to believe every single thing we read or are told. An author or a teacher or even a friend who has something they want to tell us will try to be persuasive. They will try to convince us that their idea is a good one for us to believe. Sometimes they will even present their opinion like it is a fact. And we need to be smart enough to think about what we are hearing and decide, is it a fact or is it an opinion or is it a combination of both? So I wanted to add just a little bit to this video to talk a little bit more about these two big ideas. So this is where we had left off. And inside this orange circle, I had said that I think we can find part of the author's message for the book. So the author's message, I would say, from what we just read in this video, is that people have a responsibility to take care of the earth or of the environment, the earth in which we live. And also, people's actions, that's the things they do or that we do, have an impact on, which means cause a change to the environment. And as I realized that is the author's message, it also gives a reason for the page about cafeteria trays. Remember when we read about how Miss Minerva was upset about all of the cafeteria trays not being recyclable and not wanting to throw them away so they go into a landfill. And so she was trying to hide them in a closet or store them in a closet. And I was wondering, why is the author writing about this? Because it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the story. But it does go with the author's message about how people have a responsibility to take care of the earth, and that our actions or the things we do can cause a change to the environment. And so the cafeteria trays were all about the importance of being able to recycle things so that we don't have to keep putting more and more into landfills. One of my big ideas is that you, the reader, have to figure out that message, the author's message, and then you have to decide if it is fact, opinion, or scientific theory. You also have to decide if it is all true or just partially true, which would be a mix of facts and opinions. Oftentimes, when someone wants to convince you of their idea or of something they believe is true, whether it is the author of a book or a teacher or a friend, they might be saying something like, this causes this, This is a problem because it causes this. That is talking about cause and effect. And that is what is happening here in this part of the book when Doc Culpepper is talking about global warming and the coral reef. So remember, Doc Culpepper is a fictional character. So what she is saying is really the message from the author. So the author of the book is using this character to present his message to us that he wants us to believe. So let's look at what cause and effect is. Doc Culpepper says that global warming causes ocean temperatures to rise. You and I looked up global warming to find out what causes global warming. And we found that using oil and gas, according to Google, what we found, using oil and gas for transportation, cars, planes, can cause global warming. And then the author in this book, using Doc Culpepper, said that global warming causes ocean temperatures to rise. And then she, Doc Culpepper, said that the warmer ocean temperature is causing the coral reef to die. So this here is the issue in the book. The coral reef is dying. And so the laboratory experiment that the class is doing is working on this problem and looking to see if there's anything they can do to help. But on this page that we spent so much time on, the author was saying this, the coral reef dying, is the effect of ocean temperatures rising, and that is the effect of global warming. And global warming is the effect of people using so much oil and gas, especially over the last 100 years. Another way to look at cause and effect would be to say that these things that happen in the blue are things that people do, and that the actions of people can cause a problem, can cause a change to the environment. So the problem is global warming, and then global warming is the cause of these things happening here in the world, in the environment that is here in green. So these things in green are the effects of this problem, and this problem is the effect of these actions that people do. And so this is a way of showing how the actions of people have an impact on or cause a change to the environment. Now, the author in the book did not list these three things, but I went to the internet and I looked up what causes global warming. And here were just three of the things I found. Does that mean it's true? I can't say that if it's true or not. I'm just saying this is what I found when I looked on the internet. So one was burning fossil fuels. Fossil fuels would be like oil and natural gas and coal. This is used for cars and planes. Cutting down forests and farming livestock like cows. So these were listed here as actions that people do that are causing global warming. Global warming can be measured. For example, someone could measure the temperature outside in the same place every day or every week or every month or every year for hundreds of years, and then graph it and look over time to see, is the temperature staying the same, going down, or going up? One measurement is the ocean temperature becoming warmer. This is something people can measure. And so if people have been measuring this in the same place every year for 100 years, and you look at a graph and you see that the temperature is going up consistently over that time, then you could say global warming is, maybe you could say it's a fact. It is something we can measure. But what is harder to call a fact is to say these are the exact things that are causing this. It is also a little bit harder to say it's a fact to say that these things happening are definitely happening because of this. So this global warming, because it can be measured, we can say this is a fact. But when scientists are trying to determine exactly what is causing the global warming, they are going to do a lot of experiments and get a lot of data. And they are going to make something called a theory. And the theory will be that these actions done by people are contributing to, maybe one of them isn't the cause all by itself, but maybe a combination of actions done by people over a long period of time are contributing to this problem, to this issue of global warming that can be measured. So listing the causes of the problem is a theory based on a lot of research and experiments. And so it is called a scientific theory. These events are happening and can be recorded and observed. There can be measurements, but determining what causes the change here is also going to be a theory. It can be a scientific theory because it is based on experiments and observations and looking at data. Now, when someone tells you something or when you read something, it is helpful to think about, what is said here that I can check? Is anything said or written here that I can investigate to see, is there evidence? So for example, one of the things the author said is that the ocean temperature is becoming warmer every year. And I decided, I bet that's something that could be checked. So I went to the internet and I found this website, and it tells us the oceans are getting warmer. It is a graph of the ocean's temperature every year going back to 1880. That is over 140 years ago. And they have been measuring the ocean temperature every year since then. And then you can put it on a graph and you can see, even though it actually got colder here, over time, even though it's not going up every single year consistently, when you look at the whole graph and you come to where we are right now, you can see this is warmer than where it was 140 years ago. So this is an example of looking at data. Data is numbers that can be measured. When you are looking at a graph of data that has been measured, that is something that can give us evidence of what a person is saying is true. I said two things that I think we should check to see if they are true or if there is any evidence of them. One thing I said is that global warming is a scientific theory. So the first thing I should do is clarify something. When I think about how measuring the temperature every year for 140 years and putting it on a graph is something that is a measurement, that is a fact, then, and I can see the temperature going up overall over time, then I can say, okay, global warming, or the temperature of the Earth, has been rising overall from 140 years ago to today. And so I can say this is a fact. I can look at the data and say, yes, those are numbers that have been measured. I think the part that I see as a scientific theory is saying, okay, these actions by people for the last 100 years are what have caused this problem, and that this problem is what has caused these events in the world today. I do think there is a lot of scientific evidence to support this theory. I do think that scientists have been working all over the world. They have been working together collaboratively. They have been collecting data for a long time. They have been doing experiments, and they have good evidence for their theory. But what does that mean exactly to say something is a scientific theory? So I decided to look that up. And I found this article from nps.gov. And it says, do scientists agree about climate change? And I want to read to you a little bit from this article. It says the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is IPCC, has concluded that emissions from human activities, that would be like the exhaust from a car when you're driving, are causing climate change. So that is their conclusion based on their research and collecting their data. But this is the part that I want to look at right here. When faced with a question, scientists first develop a hypothesis. A hypothesis is when you take everything that you have already learned, and then you say, I think that if this happens, then this will happen. I think that this causes this. And then they want to design an experiment to test their hypothesis to see if they are right or not. That's what it means to subject their hypothesis to rigorous experimentation and observation. If your experiment proves the hypothesis, and you can do that experiment again and again and get the same result, then it is called a theory, and that will summarize several experiments and observations. A theory, a scientific theory, does not need to have 100% agreement to be valid, to be accepted as true. And theories seldom achieve unanimous approval. That means not very often will a theory be accepted by 100% of the scientists. Scientists may disagree about certain aspects of climate change or global warming, but this is part of the scientific process, not a sign that the theory is inaccurate or not true. A theory is different from a law. A law is a predicted set of observations with no significant exceptions. That's a little bit tricky to understand. For example, we say gravity is a law, the law of gravity. What goes up must come down. We do not expect to throw something up in the air and to have it just continue going up, 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 and never come down again. Theories do not grow up to be laws once they are proven. I also found that to be interesting. So that is a little bit about what a scientific theory is. I also made a comment about how when I lived in Alaska, there were some homes that were built on tundra, and I said tundra was frozen ground. and that with global warming, some of that tundra is softening, and then it cannot support the home. And I thought, it would be good to check to see if there is any evidence of what I said. Why should you believe me unless you can check it to see if there is evidence of what I said? So I went to see if there's an article written on this, and I realized that I said something wrong. Tundra refers more to the biome or to the area of the world that has frozen ground. The frozen ground is called permafrost. And so here in the title of this article, you can see it says, "The Race to Save Arctic Cities as Permafrost Melts." It starts out by saying, "As the ground shifts beneath their feet." So this is a very long article, but I highlighted a little bit that I want to share with you. Here it says, in Alaska, entire villages may be relocated, moved, because the land upon which they are built is no longer trustworthy. Buildings and roads built upon the thawing permafrost are shifting and cracking. Here it says, the houses are sinking into the warming earth. This part of the article explains what permafrost is. It says permafrost is any stretch of ground, including soil and bedrock, that remains frozen for 2 years or more. The top layer, called the active layer, freezes and thaws with the seasons, but the layer beneath stays at 0 degrees Celsius for multiple years. It says even permafrost that's been around for thousands of years is beginning to give way. The landscape of the Arctic is changing more than it has since the end of the last ice age. Here it says climate change exacerbates, that means makes worse, existing permafrost issues. The main problem has to do with soil moisture, how wet the soil is, how much water is in the soil or the dirt. When water freezes, it expands or it takes up more space. So the ground rises. Conversely, this means the opposite. When it thaws, when the water thaws and goes back to being water, the soil will contract. It will become less, take up less space, and the ground sinks. Permafrost in many places across the Arctic is now locked in a pattern of thawing and refreezing each new season, when once it remained steady. The ground rises and sinks with each change in the weather. I was happy to see at the end of the article, it was giving solutions to this problem. Each solution is about how to keep the permafrost layer cold enough to stay frozen. And the solutions ranged from removing the snow that accumulates on the ground to preventing melted snow from seeping into the ground. They also talked about how it would help to build houses on these supports rather than directly onto the ground, because then the ground would stay colder. They also talk about a technology called thermosiphon. I'm not sure how to say that. Thermosiphon. It said these are narrow tubes that passively pull heat from the ground and ventilate it up into the air, keeping the heat away from the permafrost. So that article shows a little bit of evidence about what I was talking about, but it also helped us find out that I said something wrong that was not quite accurate. I used the word tundra when I should have used the word permafrost. So I think my big message from this video today is that as the reader, we have to figure out, we need to always be on the lookout for what is the author's message? Is there something that the author wants us to learn about the world, about the earth, about life? And is it fact or is it the author's opinion? Or is it a mixture of both? When an author, usually by way of using one of its characters, in this case, a teacher, is saying things that sound like fact, then we should be able to look for some evidence of that. We should be able to use our brain and think about, is that fact or is that opinion? Is it scientific theory that we can probably trust, but that we need to remember is a theory? And do we want to agree with the author or disagree? Or just say, I hear what the author is saying. I have figured out what the author wants me to believe, and I will consider it, but maybe not make a decision today. It is just important to remember that when people want to persuade us to have the same opinion as them and to believe what they believe, they are going to say things as though they are fact. And we just need to be smart enough to remember that and to be good thinkers, so that instead of believing everything that everybody tells us, we can stop and think for ourselves and say, is there evidence to back up what they are saying? Is there a mixture of fact and opinion in here? Is there some fact and some theory? And we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to know for sure. It's good enough for us just to do that thinking about it. And that will help us be responsible citizens of the world who are good thinkers. And as good thinkers, we can also see problems that are happening, such as coral reefs that are dying, and start to think about what solutions could we help discover. I found it interesting with global warming, we can only call it a problem if it really definitely is the cause of these issues here happening in the world. So if it is definitely true that these issues are happening because of this, and we can then say this is a problem, then we can start thinking about solutions. Well, I find it interesting that some people think the solutions are to eat less meat, drink less milk, cut back on flying, don't use the airplane so much, leave your car at home, don't use the car very much, reduce your energy use, don't use your air conditioner very much. And if we do those things, then global warming would be less of a problem. It would get better. I wonder if another way to look at finding a solution to this problem would be to look over here at the causes. Now, again, it is theory that these issues of things that people do are what altogether are causing this problem. But if these are the issues, then wouldn't it be interesting as a problem solver to say, then maybe we could find a different way to get a car and an airplane to move and travel besides using fossil fuels, besides using gas and oil. And there are a lot of people working on that very type of solution. For cutting down forests, to say, why is it that they are cutting down the forest? What do they need it for? And is there a different way to help them get what they need besides cutting down forest? Is there a different solution for them than for cutting down these forests? And for the issue of raising cows, to say, okay, instead of saying no more cows, no more beef, no more milk, is there a way to handle that problem? I think this has to do with the gas that is released by the cows. Well, maybe there's a solution for kind of capturing that gas and then somehow changing it chemically so that it no longer causes a problem in the atmosphere or to the climate. So, in other words, instead of saying, okay, don't use a car, don't use a plane, don't raise a cow, think about to kind of solve those problems rather than just say, oh, let's just not use them at all. And I think there are a lot of scientists who are working on that very thing. That might be an interesting career to have, actually, to work on solving some of these problems so that this problem of global warming starts to get turned around. So I think this was a really great part of the book to read because it helped us to become good thinkers and to think about what is the author's message. I think we discovered that. And then to do some thinking about, how much is fact? How much is opinion? Is there any research I can do to find evidence for this? And to just start learning how to become someone who is a thinker, not just of being able to tell the difference between fact and opinion, especially when someone is trying to be persuasive and to persuade us. You know, it's very important for us to be able to tell the difference between fact and opinion, or when something is said like a fact, to be able to check it out and look for some evidence, to consider different sides of a situation, and also to be someone who wants to be a problem solver. And so when we do see there's a problem, to be thinking about, what could a solution be? That's how this world will solve global problems, by readers like you putting your heads together and working collaboratively, even all around the world, to come up with ideas that might solve problems. Okay, now I will say so long, Cheddar Chips.